There are few things in life that unite the internet more quickly than a piece of plastic shaped like a bear, sold by Starbucks for one day only. This winter, images of people camping outside Starbucks at 2 a.m., sprinting across mall floors, or clutching a small bear-shaped cup with tears in their eyes took over TikTok. We saw crowds rushing towards displays, resellers flipping the cups for $300 or more, and influencers proudly sharing their haul like they've discovered rare diamonds instead of a seasonal drink vessel. And then the backlash came. Duets mocking the hysteria, comments calling people embarrassing, and discourse about capitalism, adulthood, and the absurdity of it all. It wasn't just a cup. It wasn't even just a trend. It was a cultural moment, one that revealed something much deeper about who we are right now. Because when you strip away the memes and the drama, the bear cup phenomenon taps into a much older emotional truth. Our human, almost childlike desire to hold onto something cute, comforting, collectible, and most importantly, limited. So in today's video essay, we're going to take this viral moment and pull back the curtain, because this isn't the first time people have lined up for hours for a novelty object. From Beanie Babies in the 90s, to Victorian teddy bears, from 1950s Tupperware parties, to Meter perfumes inspired by baby powder and clean sheets, cultures across history have always had eras defined by the objects we obsess over. And today we'll explore why the bear cup became the perfect storm of aesthetics, nostalgia, and modern loneliness. We'll trace the historical lineage of cute consumerism, look at why women especially got mocked for liking adorable things, and unpack how capitalism packages comfort into purchasable form. But more importantly, we'll ask, why are we drawn to items that remind us of childhood? And what does it mean when consumerism becomes a ritual? And is the bear cup craze just silly fun, or a sign of something deeper in our culture that we're too embarrassed to admit it? This is the story of the Starbucks Bear Cup, but really, it's a story about us. And hello everyone, my name is Laura, and welcome back to my channel. Chapter 1, Cute Fever, How the Bear Cup Took Over the Internet. The rise of the Starbucks Bearista Cup didn't happen in a vacuum. In fact, trends like this almost never do. On the surface, it looks like people simply lost their minds over a cute piece of drinkware. But when you look closer, you start to see a confluence of social forces, emotional needs, and deeply human impulses colliding in one little bear-shaped vessel. The bear cup became popular because it touched three timeless cultural nerves: collecting, nostalgia, and exclusivity, and packaged them into an object so charming that it practically demanded emotional attachment. Part of the cup's appeal comes from its hybrid identity. It's not just a tumbler or a figurine or a novelty item. It occupies the liminal space between categories, tapping into multiple parts of our brain at once. The little knitted beanie, the rounded cheeks, the tiny dot nose, and that gently vacant expression put it squarely in the realm of a baby schema, a term coined by ethologist Konrad Lorenz in the 1940s. Baby schema refers to features: oversized head, small facial features, round shape, that instinctively trigger feelings of protection and affection in adults. It's why we melt when we see puppies. It's why cartoon characters from Mickey Mouse to Pikachu are designed with exaggerated cuteness. And it's why a plastic cup shaped like a bear can provoke such a visceral awe response that it bypasses logic entirely. The same psychological mechanism fueled the Beanie Baby mania of the 90s. People weren't just hoarding plush toys. They were collecting comfort. Every Beanie Baby came with a name, a birthday, a micro story that allowed adults to project personality and meaning onto them. A bear wasn't just a stuffed animal. It was a princess, or Snort, or Britannia the bear. It created an emotional hook. The Starbucks Bear Cup taps into the exact same security. It's more than a cup. It's a character, a companion, a seasonal friend that signals warmth, coziness, childhood, and a fleeting moment in time. But the lineage of cute obsession stretches back even further. The first teddy bears of the early 1900s were cultural sensations. After a political cartoon depicted President Theodore Roosevelt refusing to shoot a bear cup, toy shop owners capitalized on the story by creating Teddy's Bear, a soft, sweet symbol of gentleness in an era of industrial chaos. Victorian and Edwardian children had full-blown doll mania, collecting porcelain faces with delicate features that were meant to evoke innocence. After both World Wars, the West saw a boom in nostalgia toys, plush animals, little figurines, and miniature domestic objects that softened the edges of a world recovering from trauma. And then came Sanrio. In 1974, Hello Kitty debuted with no mouth and a perfectly round face, inviting the viewer to project their emotions onto her. She became the global ambassador for kawaii culture, a moment of softness, sweetness, and non-threatening cuteness, born from the emotional exhaustion of post-war Japan. Kawaii wasn't shallow. It was a rebellion, a way for a culture recovering from devastation to embrace gentleness as a form of collective healing. Whenever times felt uncertain, cultures across history reached for cuteness as a balm. And that brings us to today. Imagine the world at the moment the Bear Cup dropped. Rising housing costs, global instability, a loneliness epidemic, remote work isolation, burnt-out culture, and a winter season that already tends to heighten emotional vulnerability. When life feels overwhelming, people gravitate towards objects that feel emotionally manageable. Soft, round, small, gentle. A cute item becomes a tiny anchor, a way of saying, here's something safe, here's something I can hold. So no, the Bear Cup craze wasn't irrational. It was inevitable. The backlash, people calling it embarrassing or childish, completely missed the point. Psychologists have long documented that cute objects spike in popularity during periods of uncertainty and stress. When the world feels sharp, people seek out what is soft. When life becomes unpredictable, we cling to things that are comforting, repeatable, and familiar. The Bear Cup wasn't a failure of maturity. It was a perfectly human response to a difficult cultural moment. As one historian beautifully summarized it, when the world becomes harsh, people reach for softness. And the internet did exactly that, one Bear Cup at a time. Chapter 2. The femininity factor. Why women get mocked for caring about cute things. This is the point in the Bear Cup discourse where the internet's tone shifted from playful confusion to outright contempt. At first, people laughed about the lines forming outside Starbucks before dawn, or joked about the frantic scramble to get the last cup on the shelf. But when the videos featured women squealing with delight, women proudly holding up their new Bear Cup as if it were a trophy, women sharing their excitement in car hauls filmed in soft winter light, suddenly the comments took a distinctly sharper edge. Variations of "this is embarrassing," "grow up," and "imagine acting like this over a cup" flooded their pages. Some viewers felt so comfortable in their disdain that they questioned these women's intelligence, their maturity, even their employment status. And yet, beneath the surface, this wasn't really about the Bear Cup at all. It was about who is allowed to find joy and who is punished for it. This reaction fits a pattern that has shadowed femininity for centuries. When men line up for Air Jordans or pay thousands for rare sneakers, society praises their passion and knowledge. When adult men fill entire rooms with Funko Pops, action figures, and model cars, the internet calls them devoted collectors. When men spend hours analyzing sports stats, memorizing comic book lore, or debating the best vintage electric guitars, their enthusiasm is framed as expertise. But when women express excitement over something cute, when they collect plushies, decorate with pastels, or clamor for a seasonal Starbucks cup, suddenly it's childish, immature, cringe. Somehow, soft joy becomes a moral failure. The double standard has deep historical roots. In the Victorian era, middle and upper class women collected dolls not simply as toys, but as decorative art objects. These dolls featured meticulous clothing, delicate porcelain faces, and hand-sewn accessories that required craftsmanship on par with couture. Yet, instead of being celebrated for their artistry, these women were framed as frivolous or juvenile. Their collections were dismissed as sentimental indulgences rather than expressions of taste or creative preservation. Even though male collectors of taxidermy, weapons, or ancient coins were considered discerning and cultured, the mid-20th century repeated the pattern. In the 1950s, housewives poured enormous effort into domestic aesthetics. Color-coordinated kitchens, themed holiday decor, delicate ceramics, scrapbooks, crocheted blankets. They weren't just hobbies, they were creative outlets in a time when women were denied many others, yet popular culture mocked them as shallow, trivial, or vapid. Their interests were framed as silly distractions, rather than legitimate aesthetic pursuits. Meanwhile, men's leisure activities, fishing, car maintenance, woodworking, were depicted as noble and rugged, expressions of skill rather than vanity. Fast forward to the early 2010s, and the same contempt fell upon teenage Tumblr girls. Their love of pastel aesthetics, kawaii, fashion, indie bands, and emotional expression became a cultural joke. These girls invented entire visual languages. Soft grunge, early meme culture, bedroom collaging, vaporwave aesthetics that shaped digital femininity for our generation, and yet their creations were met with relentless ridicule. The internet labeled them dramatic, over-emotional, cringeworthy. Ironically, many of the aesthetics these young women pioneered were later embraced by mainstream culture. Once the girls were gone and once men and corporations claimed the trend. Pop culture has always reinforced this dynamic, and Legally Blonde Elle Woods is treated as unserious because she loves fashion and beauty, until her supposed superficiality becomes the very skill that wins her the case. In Devil Wears Prada, Miranda Priestley's influence over global fashion is mocked as shallow, despite the industry's massive cultural and economic impact. And in Clueless, Cher's deep understanding of style, social nuance, and personal presentation is played for laughs, even though it demonstrates intelligence, empathy, and intuition. Again and again, feminine-coded passions are trivialized, minimized, or ridiculed, up until the moment men adopt them. Only then do they become valuable. Once men appreciate skincare, it becomes self-care. Once men wear pastels, it becomes preppy. Once men collect cute figurines, it becomes nerd culture. The interests themselves haven't changed, only the gender associated with them. This is why the Bear Cup discourse was never really about consumerism. People weren't furious about the cup. They were furious that women cared about the cup, that women were joyful, excited, and sentimental and earnest, that they dared to express enthusiasm in a way that wasn't ironic, restrained, or cool. The Bear Cup touched a cultural nerve because it represented a form of femininity that refuses to apologize for being soft. It was cute, whimsical, unnecessary, three traits that when combined become near sinful in a society that treats feminine joy as inherently suspect. Women's happiness, especially when it's loud or childlike or visually expressive, is still policed with startling aggression. We mock women for loving romance novels, for loving Taylor Swift, for loving pumpkin spice, for loving skincare or loving pink, for loving stationery, for loving anything. Really, that doesn't serve someone else. So the backlash to the Bear Cup wasn't an embarrassment. It wasn't social critique. It wasn't even about waste or capitalism. It was about control. It was about reminding women that their joy should be quiet, private, mature, and restrained. That enthusiasm is unbecoming. That cuteness must be outgrown. That softness is a silly thing to cling to in adulthood. But the truth is, the Bear Cup wasn't embarrassing. It was culturally feminine, and that, more than anything, is why the internet felt so uncomfortable mocking it. Chapter 3, The History of Cute Consumerism, from Teddy Roosevelt's to Hello Kitty to now. To understand why the Starbucks Bear Cup became a cultural wildfire, we have to zoom out, way out, because cute consumerism isn't just a fad on TikTok. It's a repeating pattern spanning more than a century that re-emerges whenever culture feels unstable, anxious, or directionless. Cute objects function like an emotional safety blankets, allowing people, especially women and children, but truly everyone, to attach to something soft in moments when the world feels sharp. The Bear Cup is simply the latest bead in a very long string of cultural pearls. The story truly begins in 1903 with the surprising birth of the teddy bear. During a hunting trip, President Theodore Roosevelt famously refused to shoot a defenseless bear cub. The incident was turned into a political cartoon that quickly went viral, well, viral for 1903, and captured the nation's imagination. Inspired, a Brooklyn shop owner created the first teddy bear, which sold out almost instantly. These plush animals weren't just toys, they symbolized innocence, mercy, and emotional refuge during a politically tense era marked by industrialization, labor unrest, and shifting cultural landscapes. The teddy bear became a cultural icon because it made people feel unsafe. Cute objects have always carried that function, emotional softeners in hard times. By the 1920s through to the 40s, cuteness quietly infiltrated domestic life. If cottagecore has a grandmother, she lived in this era. Women collected soft porcelain dolls, with cherubic faces, chenille animals with soft textures, embroidered chickens, and novelty kitchenware that turned household chores into acts of aesthetic pleasure. This was the era that blurred the line between utility and charm. Your butter dish might be shaped like a lamb, your teapot might be a plump ceramic hen. Even in a world navigating the Great Depression and the upheaval of World War II, domestic cuteness thrived as a way to infuse homes with warmth, control, and small acts of joy. These objects weren't trivial, they were antidotes. Then came the 1950s, when consumer culture exploded and Tupperware mania became the blueprint for modern product drops. Housewives filled living rooms for Tupperware parties, eagerly waiting for limited edition pastel bowls or exclusive seasonal colors. The excitement and exclusivity, the competitive rush of being the first to get the new release, it mirrors today's Starbucks drops almost perfectly. These items represented more than cooking convenience. They signified community, aspiration, and the pride of owning something fresh, new, and cheerfully designed. The bright colors and smooth textures weren't accidental, they were engineered cuteness. The next major shift came from the 1970s to 1990s Japan, where Sanrio transformed cute culture into a global phenomenon. When Hello Kitty arrived in 1974, she wasn't marketed as childish, she was marketed as comforting. Her design, big head, tiny features, no mouth, made her a perfect projection screen for the owner's emotions. Kawaii culture flourished as a form of gentle rebellion, using softness to counteract the pressures of a rapidly modernizing society. In Japan, cuteness became a way to soften adulthood, not escape it. Stressful commutes, rigid work environments, and high societal expectations made kawaii items, pens, stationaries, keychains, small plushes, tiny pockets of emotional ease within daily life. Kawaii was not immaturity, it was a resistance through tenderness. Then, the 1990s hit Western culture with one of the most iconic, cute crazes, Beanie Babies. These tiny plush animals weren't just toys, they were a speculative market. People lined up for hours, they traded in malls. They bought rare editions for hundreds of dollars. TY, the company behind Beanie Babies, capitalized on scarcity by discontinuing certain models, creating artificial exclusivity that sent collectors into a frenzy. Fights broke out in stores, news crews reported on stampedes at toy shops. The Bear Cup discourse today mirrors those same scenes: crowds, chaos, resale markets, with a softer aesthetic overlay. Every generation performs this ritual differently, but the emotional script stays the same. In the 2010s, cute culture took on a digital form with Tumblr pastels, cottagecore seedlings, kawaii stationery hauls, soft grunge aesthetics, and the rise of the soft girl. For a generation of teenagers, navigating early social media stress, cuteness became both identity and refuge. Gentle visuals, cream sweaters, warm fairy lights, teacups, plushes, and unmade beds became visual therapy. Cute wasn't just an aesthetic, it was an emotional language. In a culture suddenly overwhelmed by digital noise, softness became a sanctuary. And then when COVID hit, which leads to the 2020s, the cute renaissance, in a time defined by anxiety, isolation, and uncertainty, cuteness surged again. Squished marshmallows took over stores with marshmallow softness. Many brands turned mundane objects into adorable micro collectibles. Adults flocked to Build-A-Bear for comfort plushes. Starbucks released confetti tumblers that sold out instantly. And TikTok boosted these items into viral stardom, turning every cute object into an emotional support talisman. And now we arrive at the Starbucks Bear Cup, a product launched into a world primed for cuteness, scarcity, nostalgia, and collective burnout. It checks every single box of historical cute consumerism. A recognizable character, a sense of innocence, exclusivity, a warm aesthetic, and an emotional purpose. If anything, the Bear Cup's success doesn't reveal something new. It confirms something old. Every generation returns to cute culture during emotional turbulence. And we've been doing it for 120 years. The Bear Cup is not an anomaly, it's a continuation. A soft, round, smiling chapter in a very long cultural story. One that's far more ancient and far more emotional than a cup could ever reveal on its own. Chapter 4, the commodification of comfort. Why we buy feelings, not objects. Historically, objects held meaning because they collected it slowly over time. A locket inherited from a grandmother, a postcard purchased on a trip abroad, a handmade quilt stitched with care. These things carried the memories of the hands that touched them. But in late capitalist culture, companies have learned to shortcut the process. They no longer wait for us to form emotional attachments naturally, they manufacture them from the start. The Starbucks Bearista Cup is a perfect example of the shift. It wasn't designed simply as drinkware. It was engineered as an experience, a ready-made capsule of comfort and sentiment. Starbucks understands the psychology of modern consumption, the thrill of limited drops, the appeal of aesthetic identity, and the irresistible pull of scarcity. They know that in a hyper-online world, cute objects become social currency, something to film, to share, to proudly display as a symbol of taste or seasonal spirit. The line outside the store becomes part of the ritual. The TikTok haul becomes part of the story, and the resale price becomes part of the mythology. What was once simple shopping has evolved into a kind of performance art, where purchasing is both an act of consumption and a narrative. This strategy works because it taps into genuine psychological responses. Studies show that cute objects trigger pleasurable chemical releases in the brain. The dopamine rush of anticipation, the serotonin of comfort, the oxytocin activated by caretaking instincts. The urge to own something cute isn't irrational or immature. It's rooted in biology. Humans are wired to be soothed by softness. Yet this is also where capitalism reveals the sharpest irony. Instead of addressing the underlying systems that create instability, unaffordable housing, declining community structures, burnt-out level work expectations, we are offered comfort that can be purchased. We're handed tiny, adorable objects engineered to soothe us just enough to keep going. The Bearista Cup becomes an emotional band-aid, a small pastel-colored reprieve from a culture that leaves so many people exhausted, lonely, and overstimulated. And yet, it would be overly cynical to say the joy people felt was fake or manipulated. A commodified object can still generate real happiness. The excitement of finally finding the cup, the warmth of sipping a holiday drink through a smiling bear face, the softness it brings to an otherwise stressful day. These emotions are authentic, even if mechanisms behind them are manufactured. Late capitalism may package nostalgia and comfort into sellable forms, but once an object enters someone's hands, it becomes more than a marketing strategy. It becomes a memory, a small delight, a moment of gentleness in a world that rarely offers it freely. The Bearista Cup may have been designed for profit, but the joy it created belonged entirely to the people who held it. Chapter 5. The Aesthetics of Escapism. Why Girlhood is the New Comfort Currency. The Bearista Cup phenomenon didn't appear out of nowhere. It erupted in the middle of a nationwide return to what I call sentimental girlhood aesthetics, a cultural wave defined by softness, nostalgia, and emotional safety. Everywhere you look, femininity is being reimagined not as something performative or sexualized, but as something cozy, gentle, and inward-facing. Coquette bows tied neatly into hair, pink ribbons adorning everything from phone cases to holiday trees. The revival of the 2014-era YouTube aesthetics with warm lighting and soft vlogs, the rise of cozy gaming and life stimulation worlds, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, where the stakes are low and the environment feels safe. Hyper-feminine decor fills bedrooms with scalloped edges, ruffled bedding, and pastel palettes that soothe rather than stimulate. Rom-coms have made a triumphant return as comfort food for the spirit, offering predictable storylines in an unpredictable world. We're baking sourdough again, wearing ballet cardigans, rewatching childhood comfort movies, and filling our shelves with plushies, collectibles, and comfort characters. None of this is random. It's a cultural craving, a longing for innocence, softness, and emotional clarity at a time when everything else feels frighteningly complex. This trend mirrors earlier moments in American cultural history where society collectively turned backwards in search for emotional security. After World War II, the 1950s saw an explosion boom in post-war nostalgia. Advertisements filled with pastel kitchens and smiling housewives symbolized a romanticized stability that didn't truly exist, but the fantasy offered psychological comfort. In the 1970s, during high inflation and political upheaval, the nation entered a Little House on the Prairie phase, romanticizing simplicity as a way to cope with economic precarity. Even the plush toy mania of the 90s emerged during recession-era anxieties. People clung to stuffed animals not just as toys, but as talismans of safety. Each of these eras reveals the same pattern when the world becomes unstable. Culture swings back towards softness, nostalgia, and childlike innocence. Girlhood becomes a sanctuary. Today's sentimental girlhood aesthetic isn't about immaturity, it's about escape. It reflects a deep emotional exhaustion, especially among young women who face unprecedented levels of economic stress, loneliness, and social pressure. The visual language of girlhood, bows, and plush toys, sparkles, soft colors becomes a way of creating eternal refuge. It isn't about returning to literal childhood, but reclaiming the feelings associated with it. Security, gentleness, presence, and emotional freedom. A world where joy isn't embarrassing, where softness isn't a weakness, where your identity doesn't need to be optimized, aestheticized, or monetized. This is why cute objects like the Starbucks Bear Cup hold symbolic weight far beyond their physical form. They operate as emotional anchors, tiny, tangible reminders that softness still exists in a world that feels increasingly sharp. Holding something cute and round, something designed to be comforting, is an act of self-preservation. It's a quiet declaration that you are allowed to seek gentleness, allowed to step away from cynicism, allowed to feel joy without apology. Girlhood is not returning because people are regressing. It's returning because it never fully left. It resurfaces whenever adulthood feels unimaginable, whenever stability becomes uncertain, whenever the world demands too much. So when people lined up for a Bear Cup, they weren't simply buying a product. They were reaching for a small piece of emotional clarity, an object that whispered in its quietly smiling way, "You are allowed softness in a world that feels sharp." Chapter 6, Mockery, Misogyny, and the Policing of Joy. The backlash to the Bear Cup revealed something far more insidious than simple annoyance at a trend. People weren't really mocking the cup, they were mocking the girls who loved it. The ridicule was rarely about a consumerism or sustainability or spending habits. It was always about behavior, the squealing, the excitement, the earnest joy. It was the femininity that bothered people. It was the audacity of women, especially young women, to be visibly happy about something soft, cute, and non-serious. And this disdain fits into a long, painful lineage of how society polices feminine enthusiasm. We saw it when teenage girls screamed for the Beatles in the 60s, an emotion so powerful that male journalists labeled it as mass hysteria, as if girls were incapable of legitimate passion. We saw it again in the 90s when boy band fans were painted as vapid, shallow, or delusional, even though their cultural influence reshaped the music industry. In the 2000s, Twilight fans were mocked relentlessly and jokes dripping with misogyny, even as the franchise generated billions and defined a generation's pop culture landscape. And today, Taylor Swift fans, the largest and most profitable fan base in music, are belittled as obsessive or cringe, despite their economic power and cultural sophistication. The pattern never changes. When men love something loudly, their passion is reframed as expertise, dedication, or fandom culture. Men camping outside a store for the latest gaming console celebrated as loyal customers. Men spending thousands on sports memorabilia are seen as historians of their favorite teams. Men attending comic book conventions or building sprawling collections of figurines are viewed as enthusiasts, hobbyists, and connoisseurs. But when young women express passion, even when it's harmless, joyful, and community building, it is seen as immature, irrational, and embarrassing. Society treats feminine joy as a public nuisance that must be mocked into a submission, as though enthusiasm becomes respectable only after it has been stripped of femininity. And the Bear Cup uproar is simply the newest iteration of this cultural reflex. Videos of women waiting outside Starbucks at 5 a.m. were met with comments questioning their intelligence or maturity. Clips of young women smiling with their cups sparked insults about their priorities and life choices. Strangers psychoanalyzed them as emotionally stunted for enjoying something cute, while ignoring the fact that male-dominated fandoms have done the exact same thing for decades without scrutiny. The message is clear. Women are allowed hobbies, but not passions. Interest, but not excitement. Consumption, but not joy. And certainly not joy expressed unironically. It's important to recognize that the mockery isn't really about cuteness at all. It's about control. For centuries, feminine joy has been treated as something dangerous or frivolous, something to be minimalized, shamed, or corrected. When women experience happiness outside traditional roles of masculine approval, that joy becomes suspect. It becomes something people feel entitled to critique. The Bear Cup discourse exposed how quickly society rushes to put women back in their place the moment their happiness is visible, loud, or communal. Cute objects may be trivial, but the policing of the joy never is. The Mockery reveals an ongoing discomfort with women taking pleasure in something purely for themselves. It reveals a double standard that allows men to immerse themselves in hobbies without embarrassment, while treating similar behavior in women as a cultural joke, and it reveals how deeply society still fears or belittles collective female emotion. Whether it's screaming at a concert, lining up for a product drop, or simply loving something wholeheartedly. Because in the end, this was never about plastic bear cup, it was about who is allowed to feel joy without apology. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you ever picked up one of the bear cups. I mean, I am curious to go to a Starbucks and see if I can find one. I mean, I wouldn't drive to multiple ones, mainly because I just don't have time. I live in Canada. I looked online. I think you can buy them in Canada. I'm curious. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, if I walked into a Starbucks and I saw one, I'd probably buy one just because I'm like, well, I don't know. Because knowing the scarcity, I probably would, to be honest. Maybe. I don't know. Unless there's a whole bunch. I don't know. It is weird though. I mean, but to each their own. If you want to go there at 5 a.m. and you have the time and it makes you happy, by all means. Have at it. It doesn't really bother me, but I mean, paying $1,000 for one because you desperately want one, I mean, that's a bit crazy, but again, I guess if you have the money to burn, to each their own. Anyways, let me know in the comments below your whole thoughts on this. I mean, it's always something, you know what I mean? If it's not the Starbucks cup, it's just going to be something else. So let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.